be gold backed, so that's stronger than our currency.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at the petrodollar, which gave us one of the big advantages that we as the U.S.
which they just did away with like a month ago.
Exactly.
Or, in June. In June they did away with it, which is crazy.
That's a red flag.
Yeah, that's a red flag because that gives us a strategic advantage as a country, right? To be able
as much money as we want,
right?
And they got to buy their oil in dollars,
correct? And now they're moving away. So central banks holding of U.S. debt. If you go back 20 years, their central banks holding around the world, it was about 70% of U.S. debt. Now it's about 58%. So they're getting rid of our treasury bonds. They're getting rid of our debt. They don't want any, and they're dropping and dropping and dropping. They're trying to get away from the dollar.
As someone who, you're one of your hats, one of your professions is the precious metal world and gold. Do you think us getting off the gold standard was one of the stupidest things we could ever do?
Absolutely.
As a nation?
Absolutely. Because if you look at the wealth in this country and what happened, the wealth gap within 10 years widened by such a dramatic margin. I mean, people in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they could afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
You have a guy that, everyone's heard the story about the guy who was a bricklayer in 1955 and his wife stayed home and he could afford to buy a house,
single income.
I
remember my grandfather bought a brand new car for $200.
Right.
In a day.
Yeah.
Working at a factory.
Yeah. No, I love cars. So my dad was a car guy, and he's 80. So when he was 16 to 25, he was like, it was so fun because every year he would just get he would swap his cars out. They were like $500. So he'd get a GTO or he'd get a Chevelle and he's like, Chevy. It was the greatest. It was just like he could just drive a new car, wreck it, or drag or do whatever he wanted to do because they could afford stuff. And he wasn't making a lot of money back then. He could actually afford, and a lot of the stuff that I think is happening in the world. I watch your show and sometimes I see where, women are looking to, find a guy and they want $100,000 income and they want, all normal. But I actually think a lot of that, the problem what's happened is that it's so much more difficult today. 100,000 isn't even that much money, really. Yeah. And it's also like, even if somebody makes 200,000 somewhere, they might not own anything.
Yeah.
They might own nothing, and so who gives a shit how much money you make? If you don't own shit, if you don't have any assets, like you're not gonna propel yourself in life. You gotta own stuff. You gotta own it. And so you have the World Economic Forum, and they came out with an article a year ago that they were like top 10 ways that a young person could not own anything, and they thought this was like a good thing. What's a good thing about not owning anything?
Gen Zers are idiots when it comes to that. Like, not owning things. Like, they'll own some Bitcoin or whatever, but that's about it.
That's it.
They won't buy property. They won't invest in precious metals.
Yeah.
Why
do you think that is?
I'm a millennial. I'm 34, so I came right after. But I would say, so when I was in college, like there was this push to get people educated. You need to get a degree. If you don't get a degree, you fuck it up, blah, 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 right? I'm sure you guys probably went through that crap too. Now that with the internet, people are kind of in social media, they're saying you don't need that crap. But like, people were saying the only way that you're going to get ahead is to get a college degree. And a lot of wokies, hey, I don't need to own anything. I'm going to just be free. You know what I mean? Do what I want to do. So, millennials are more likely to rent and everything. And I would say the next generation after us, the Gen Zers, is even more so into we don't need to own anything. Like, we'll have some Bitcoin, but I want to be free. This whole concept of like being financially free is kind of like made people think I don't need to own assets because it ties me down.
Also,
that's where I think it comes from.
Yeah,
they've seen their parents struggle as well sometimes with property or, for example, issues, and they don't want that stress. They want to be free, like what he just said. And it's like, if I have freedom to like just be free without any type of like major bills, I'll be happy. But like you said earlier, without owning anything, what are you actually doing?